In today's world, HR's job is to curate and make sense of the fastly growing digital market and use it productively in a way that improves the employee experience at work. This is the most important new mandate many of you HR professionals have. With this very forward-looking quote, actually from Josh Berzin, principal at Berzin by Deloitte, I wished to kick off today's webinar, Digital HR and its Impact on People Management, jointly organized by Deloitte Belgium and the Worklife Hub. Hello again, everybody. This is Zoltán Vatkerti, one of the co-founders of the Worklife Hub. I will be the facilitator of this 1-hour webinar session. First and foremost, we wanted to thank all of you taking the time to participate at today's webinar. Before we kick off, we wanted to do a short housekeeping that we always do at the Worklife Hub webinars. We hope that the technology works for everyone. Please let us know if you encounter any problems, and we will try to fix it. You can do this in the comment box, in the chat box that should be on the right side of your computer screen. You can ask questions during the presentation and of course at the end of the presentation in the Q&A session, and we will try to answer all of them. You might also do this in the comment box, in the chat box. If there are still some untouched lingering questions at the end of this 1 hour, we will make sure to get back to you in a couple of days and get you a reply. We wanted to remind you to please do not use the request to speak option. This is on the top right side of your screen, because this might cause some problems in your connections. The recording and the slides will be available very, very soon, and we will send you the link. We will send you the link to the YouTube video and also to download the slides. And if you like the content of this presentation, we would like to ask you to share it with your colleagues or within your network. If you wish to share about this webinar through social media, please use #DigitalHR, #PeopleManagement, and the handlers of Worklife Hub, HR Digital Belgium, or Deloitte HC. Thank you very much for those of you who have replied to our pre-webinar survey. I think we received more than 70 replies at the end. They were really, really helpful in creating the slides of today's webinar and putting together great content that could be used even by today in your work. We have selected and grouped together 3 questions from your replies, and our expert trainers today, Steven and Agnes, will be replying to these questions at the end of the presentation. Now, the main objective of this webinar is to close the gap between the current realities of HR system and processes and the leading edge digital HR tools. We plan to do this mainly through sharing information about employee experience, digital HR, work-life balance, boundary management, and also sharing with you some tools and case studies that could be used, as I said already earlier, even today or tomorrow. And this will be followed up by the Q&A session. Again, please do not hesitate to comment, ask questions, or propose new ideas, or let us know what topic you are most passionate about. We promise that by the end of this 1-hour webinar session, you will learn 4 key takeaways that will support you in your work, delivering outstanding employee experience and finding your ways through the myriad of HR tech tools and digital HR tools that could be sometimes pretty overwhelming. So a lot of the people around the line know about the work or what we do at the Worklife Hub. As you may have already came across our previous webinar sessions of work-life integration, and listened to some of our podcast recordings or read some of our blog posts. But I would like to do a short who is who while I'm introducing Steven and Agnes. At the Worklife Hub, what we do, we integrate three main core areas: research, policy, and practice. We are experts in work-life balance, work-life integration, company policies and initiatives, and mainly policies. And now, let me set the stage for today, as we are very, very excited to have with us Stephen Play here, who is responsible for digital HR services at the Belgian Human Capital Deloitte Consulting. Stephen mainly works with huge organizations, big companies, and help them leading their organizations embracing digital disruption or creating fantastic, compelling employee experience and realizing mainly digital transformation. Stephen is one of the driving forces behind the HR Digital Belgian community, and basically we came across Stephen through one of these events, and I would recommend to all of you to check out this website. They are really an active community. Stephen is a sport enthusiast, a Krav Maga practitioner, and advisor. And our second speaker is going to be Agnes, my dear colleague, who is the second co-founder or the first co-founder of the Worklife Hub. She's an excellent speaker, a blogger. She's the host of the weekly Worklife podcast and a workplace transformer, as well as a consultant. Stephen and Agnes have prepared jointly a presentation which will last for about 20 to 30 minutes. And this will be followed up by the Q&A session. So without further ado, let me pass the floor now to Stephen and Agnes.
Thank you, Zoltan, for that nice introduction and those nice words. I'm very excited to be here with you, as we've been connecting over the last couple of months, and we found, there's absolutely a value to look at what we do together. And from my perspective, as you rightly introduced, I'm looking after the digitalization of HR and the impact that has on people. I have a background in technology consulting, actually, spent a couple of years actually advising IT leaders on how to modernize systems, how to organize around that. And I made the transition to HR 5 years ago. Where I now implement big systems, advise around systems, but also help organizations to embrace the digital world, which since the last 2 to 3 years is very active and upon us. Indeed, I'm a sports enthusiast, yes. So indeed, as you know, I like to keep a good balance between working hard, sporting hard, and spending time with my family as well. So again, very excited to be here with you, and to also with you, all the attendees, to discuss around the employee experience, digital HR, and the work-life balance.
Well, thank you very much as well. First of all, I'm really thrilled that we are here spending this hour with you. So very grateful that you all got to join us. And of course, also big thanks again to Deloitte and the Human Capital Trends team and Stephen Plehier in particular by lending us his expertise. We have learned already so much from Stephen just by preparing for this webinar. So I anticipate that you will also take away lots of information and great advice from this webinar. So as I was introduced very kindly by my co-founder, Zoltan, we have founded the Work-Life Hub a couple of years ago, really with the desire to improve people's day-to-day experience at work. And so we worked at the intersection of family policy, of life, of skills. And to set a little bit the context for today's webinar, we looked at a couple of trends that are really shaping the world of work. We usually speak a little bit about different trends, Stephen, as well. You know, we speak about women and the 5 generation at the work and demographic changes, globalization. But here I really wanted us to highlight some of the trends that are not that much spoken about and that are still key drivers, perhaps a little bit undetected, of the need for digitalization and the way digitalization creates the need for changing HR practices. So the first one is really about transparency. And this is about giving future employees, candidates, partners, supply chain, and the rest of the world a glimpse into your organization on the inside. This has been driven a lot by digitalization, by open platforms such as Glassdoor or Kununu, or the top employer awards, or the Women Working Mother top 100 employers for working parents. This is really a trend that continues to grow, with employees, workers bringing their devices, being continuously connected to social media. They all become the advocate and the voice of your employer brand. So this is definitely something that cannot be neglected. And by the way, we really believe that work-life balance initiatives are a fantastic way to showcase your employer brand. And this is what we see, for example, in the case of Adidas, which openly shares and talks and blogs about their job sharing in directors' positions, or organizations that really embrace this new world of work and show it. I'm not going to go into detail in all of them, but perhaps just highlighting another one, which is about diversity, one of my personal favorite topics. And it's really about allowing employees to bring your whole self to work. It's about freedom. It's about authenticity. If, Stephen, you need to go to a very special Krav Maga practice at 4 o'clock, and then you can work around that and still continue with your passion. I can go and pick up my kids from school. People can be, at the same time, workers, learners, carers. They're not leaving that outside the door when they join organizations. This is really about this embracing how different we are as humans, how different we are, and all of that, bring that all of that back to the organization to really enrich the innovation capacity, the work, and the effectiveness of the organization. And flexibility is perhaps another one which is very closely linked to this. And the recent survey said that about 62% of employees would change jobs if they would have more flexibility, even if it would mean to stay on the same salary or even compromise on their salary. And later I will get back to this issue of trade-offs. So I suggest that now we go and have a closer look at what it means to be digital.
Thank you, Agnes. And by means of introduction to this webinar, I've made reference to our 2017 Global Human Capital Trends report, which some of you may have looked at. If you look at the theme of that report, it is rewriting the rules for the digital age. Today, we are in what we would call the digital era. We are influenced in terms of technology, in terms of mindset, in terms of what we do, very much by the digital cloud around us, I would say. And I will go a little bit deeper in the definition of digital in a couple of minutes. Before we do that, I want to look at, what is the impact of digital on three components? What's the impact of digital on work? What's the impact on workforce? And what's the impact on HR professionals? And let me use an example to illustrate that. It's one that I'm using for a while now and sort of pictures the three components. Imagine an organization that owns and runs windmills that create electricity, the ones we see around us popping up very often. If you would go back in time, say 10 years at the start when those windmills were being put in the landscape, they were very much mechanical devices. They were basically a lot of iron, they had wings, and on that you had a generator to create electricity. That worked very well, and you had crews to run around the countryside to do maintenance. At a regular interval, they would have to visit those windmills to maintain them. Which means you needed skilled workers to maintain them, to look after the mechanical components, make sure the generator was working and the connection to the electricity was done well. Look, if you look today at such a device, the latest generation, you still have those basic components, but they added a lot of sensors. There's integrated connections, Internet of Things, to use that word, which allows these devices actually to do self-diagnosis. With those sensors, they will register the wear and tear. They will indicate when certain parts need to go into maintenance, and that's all communicated to the operating company. So that's actually a serious shift, basically, in technology that has a profound impact on work. If you look at the work, that engineer 10 years ago that had to have the skills to maintain all that mechanical components, the generator and the connection to electricity, now also probably needs to know about electronics, needs to have skills to maintain the sensor system, to maintain that connection to the network. So there has been a shift in the work and also in the organization of that work. And so if you look at how you deploy your workforce in the second column, before, these engineers, these people, maintenance people, had regular intervals to be at certain sites. Today, the windmill calls those people. The windmill says, okay, I need to have a maintenance, so there's no need more for static rostering. The rostering is very dynamic now because these devices have gone to the next generation. So the workforce has changed. The way we organize work has changed. And if you go back to the latest component in HR, that also means there's some changes for HR. There's two main changes. One is, of course, to enable the workforce to go with that transition. And that has an impact on people. People need to be reskilled. You need to have new competencies. So there's a development perspective to that. And secondly, again, it's about the organization of that work. So that's the example I want to give, maybe some highlights on what we see. In the future of work, we have changes in people that need to work, but also on leadership. Leaders need to embrace that digital era and make changes to the organization, to the process, to the people they need to ensure that the organization is ready for that era. One component we'll zoom in on later at the presentation as well is to do that as the employee experience. Today, the focus of many organizations has been transformational, has been focused on creating efficiencies. And I would personally say, with a bit of a bolder statement, that we need to become marketeers in HR and really work on the experience we give to our employees, leveraging that same technology, that same mindset that changes our business. And Agnes already referred to the workforce, so we indeed see that this is supported by a more diverse workforce. And again, to be a little bit bold about this, today we have employees that have labor contracts, fixed labor contracts. We see more and more flexi jobs coming up, and soon the robots will be amongst us. So do we need to include those robots? How do we make sure that we incorporate that? Plus, how do we organize the work around that? So that's also an important aspect. With that comes continuous learning. Also, I think learning is a domain where we see a lot of advantages, a lot of progress the latest years moving forward. Again, leveraging new technologies, as augmented reality, leveraging new mindsets, having learning integrated into your workflow versus as a bespoke moment when you do an e-learning out of your job context. And for HR, it's time to leverage that digital technology, but also analytics is a key component to that. HR today has a rich set of data because from the days we have been running payroll, we've done talent management, we have a lot of data where we can really make use of to improve that transition towards the new digital organization and employee experience. So that's is a bit of the introduction I wanted to give, and brings me to the next slide, which is about, okay, let's look at what is digital. So when I ask that question to a lot of contacts, clients, peers, friends, you often get a reference to technology. And that's true. Technology is helping us, or is a big driver for the digital era today. We have elements like social, imagine the Facebook, LinkedIn in the professional context, the use of iPhones, of other digital devices that allow us to work in a digital way. But in the end, what that does, that technology is actually a driver to change our mindset. And let me illustrate that. I mentioned Facebook or other social networks. The way I and we all interact with friends, with peers and connections has profoundly changed the last 10 years. I understand Facebook is there for 10 years. If I go 12 years back, if I wanted to meet with a friend, there was hardly an iPhone or a tablet at the moment. I had to call that friend. There was much more face-to-face contact. We had not that much direct contact because, well, there was no technology that was so fast, so quick to connect. Facebook changed that. Now I know I don't forget birthdays anymore because Facebook will remember me about that. This morning, Facebook actually proposed me to put a summary of my summer pictures on there. It's done. So I'm communicating to my friends in new ways, in new methods that I couldn't do before, because before we had to come to my home and I had to show them the pictures of the nice summer. Today, that's really changing my mindset. It's changing the way I collaborate. It's changing the way I interact. It's changing the way I work with my colleagues as well, because we have the same in organizations, the same technology, the same engagement platforms, for example, can allow us to change how we shift our mindset towards the digital world. What does that mindset, and you can see on the slide that this mindset part is actually a bigger part, because we're strong believers that digital is much more than technology. Digital is about this mindset. It's about the shift moving forward. So it brings us new things like agility. With technological change, it's very fast. I remember when I was a kid, my first computer was a Commodore 64. We had that for a couple of years. We were very happy. My son, who is today 6 years old, has his third iPad. So you see the speed of things and digital technology changing very fast, which also means for us as persons, on one hand, an organization need to become agile and adapt with that. It also allows us to innovate very fast and needs us to innovate, because today the application, the process, the mindset that we design today may have become irrelevant tomorrow because of new socio-economical, technological changes that change our digital mindset. So maybe to summarize on this one point, so in the end, this digital mindset, this digital era is really changing the typology, the how we work and how we do the nature of work.
My computer also, Stephen, was a Commodore 64.
I have great memories about Commodore 64.
Yes, and I'm sure our listeners, our audience as well. So thank you for taking us through a little bit this evolution that has profoundly changed workplaces, working styles, organization of work, and work design. However, we still see quite a bit of disconnect between the driving forces of technology and how that is shaping our lives outside of work, yet how some of the processes are still stuck in old ways of being within organizations. And if you just consider the fact that employees now have, most of them, a single device for work, for family, for play and learning, this really means that these boundaries between our lives and in and outside of work are really blurring. And here I just wanted to highlight two issues that we see HR professionals and people managers really grappling with. And one of them is boundary management and the other one is trade-off. And going again back to what you also said, Stephen, about learning, as I said, we're continuously workers, learners, carers, and social beings at the same time. These are not being separated when we go in or outside of work. Yet these 9 to 5 blocks of work where we're supposed to let go of all of that and just be focusing on our work are very, very difficult to contain. And there are ways in which outside forces, either legislation or company groups, are trying to mitigate the pressure this has on employees, for example, with the recent French legislation on the right to disconnect, or some groups like Volkswagen who centrally switch off the mail servers. And the intentions are still okay and good because it aims at really protecting workers from digital overload or email overload. However, it doesn't take into consideration our individualities, the diversity of the workforce. This is again showing one of the symptoms of this changing from the old ways of working to the new, which is the one size fits all solutions no longer work, they no longer apply. So if I'm someone who is incredibly driven in my career, I want to make headway, I want to, really achieve something for my company and myself, if they switch off my email server on me, I would get really, really frustrated. And the same is if I'm a really committed parent with young children or someone who has a care responsibility for an older person in the family. If they wouldn't allow me to make a couple of phone calls during the day and allow the spillover from my private or family life into my work life, that would be an absolute disaster. And actually, these are some of the reasons we see for staff turnover and churn. In particular for middle-aged, the people in those sandwich generation who have young children, elderly parents, and a lot's going on in their lives as well. And when we were preparing for this webinar, we had very interesting conversations with Stephen also about the fluidity, right? We no longer speak about work-life balance, which is a binary approach to either work or life, but it's really about integration. That's why we at the Work-Life Hub refer to this as integration and a fluidity between these two, and trusting people to be adults about it, trusting them that they can take these decisions for themselves. When is a moment I need to be fully present at my work? When is a moment I need to be fully present at my family? And when am I really good at it? If you have someone who is not a morning person and you give them early morning meetings, you're not using these people at their best. So it's really a question about knowing your employees, knowing your colleagues. And this is really what work-life balance boils down to for us. It's about this sense of control to have, where we are in our lives, and it's a long-term perspective about sustainable employment. And this is when work-life trade-offs come in, because if you take the long-term view, a long-term investment, a long-term relationship with your employees, you no longer require them to take trade-offs. Because at the moment we are, and a lot of us are trading off healthy eating or exercise or even sleep to be fully functioning and performant at our work. For example, in the case of women who are mothers in their career, we call this the second shift or the night shift. So they go home, they fulfill their responsibilities, they spend time with their children, and then once the children are in bed, they go back to their computers and continue working. So they may be trading off sleep or entertainment or learning other things as well. So this is for us a really fascinating area, and it could just fill out an entire webinar. So I will really restrict myself. But this is really about diversity, about allowing people to manage their time, manage their energy, and have this kind of control on fluidity that we experience actually outside of life, in our lives as consumers.
Indeed, and thank you for the introduction of the fluidity concept, Agnes. I indeed remember during our preparation we debated it quite interestingly. Let's go to experience. If you look at as a consumer, I would argue that in many cases we have today what we call fluid consumer experiences. Imagine when you want to buy something. You have today what we call omni-channel options to buy. You can buy online, you can buy mobile, you can buy in a store, but probably also combined. You can buy whatever you feel is the right way to buy clothes, plane tickets, goods, books at Amazon, etc., etc. So we have expectations when it comes to consumer experiences. And let me illustrate some of the changes that we went through the last 3 years. So it's a very short time span. You can see on the screen there's a HomePod device, and we try to find the formal name of that. I remember what that's called, and for the sake of clarity, I will not say that. It was rather complicated, I remember. But it's a device you can talk to, and we provide you an answer. Google has those, Amazon has those, Apple will have them very soon. So these are a new generation, what I would call digital device. What does that allow us to do? These devices allow us to really, in a new, different way, share information. Imagine I want to know when Albert Einstein was born. I would just ask to one of those devices who would look it up in the cloud and then come back with the right answer. Imagine again, 10 years back, you probably had to go online, go to Wikipedia to find Mr. Einstein's page and look it up. 15 years ago, you had to load a compact disc in your computer, in your laptop with the encyclopedia, and you would probably find it there. if you didn't lend it to your neighbor or to anyone of your family, because then you would have to call them. So this is a radical change in how we find information. What's important in that is the directness and the speed of things. I can ask that to this device, and within a blink of an eye, I probably have an answer, which is very different than 10 to 15 years ago. It would have taken me a lot more time. So also, I think consumers become more demanding and want things faster, as we say, with this digital revolution. Secondly, it also helps us to search, for example, or to connect with others. I can ask to this device, can you call Zoltan and Agnes? And it will launch a phone call and we'll be in a dialogue immediately. Again, taking back 15 years ago, I had to go to my cell phone, find the number, because probably I didn't know by heart. And if it was not in, I had to look it up and call them. Today, instantly, with the assistance of this digital innovation, I can do that very fast. So again, it changes my whole experience. And actually also communicating is being challenged a lot. So I think today we are heavily users of mobile phones and tablets. My personal conviction is that that will come to an end. If I look at my personal setup, I have a mobile phone and a tablet, but I also have a smartwatch and wireless headphones. I can, with that smartwatch and the headphones, call, look up information, and do whatever without even looking at the screen of my iDevice, of my telephone. So, and that's more and more going to be the reality, where we see that in Star Trek way, and we agreed to make a little Star Trek joke. I'm a big fan, actually. If you look at how Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of the Enterprise, launches the ship, he doesn't have to go into a computer and actually hit any button. He just says launch, and the ship goes ahead. So it's really, there's no more user interface. We go talking, and rather than explaining something to the computer or looking for the right way to do it, the computer, the system will do that for us. So that's really changing the way we buy, the way we work together, the way we connect, the way we consume and create information is being turned around heavily. Now, if we take that same example and put us back to today, because we can always think about the future, but we are still 2017. If you look at what's happening today, so I just give some examples of what's possible in some cutting edge situations of technology. There's some others as well, but typically what we see that outside of organizations, consumers can do great experiences in buying, communicating, connecting. However, if I were to ask you, and just reflect on this a little bit, now find in your organization the standard operating procedure to ask for a day of holiday. Is there a system that you can ask to that? Is there a screen that within a blink of an eye will provide you the answer? Probably not. If you look at that, if I look at a lot of the experiences I have within the company, we today do not have that same experience that we have outside. When I ask, when is Albert Einstein born? Blink of an eye, I have an answer from my tablet, my phone, or the intelligent voice device. In an organization, today we see that employees do not have the same type of experience, which means that, as you can see on the slide, if you put that on a picture, there is a digital experience gap. And part of this webinar is indeed a call for action to really consider that, to think as a professional, to think as an organization, if this is true for you and how you can close down that gap and the impact it has on people. Well, this is positive. I always say that we should use these digital experiences to create better people experiences. And the HR world, the people management world is all about creating great workforce experiences. It's also proven, if you look at the reports of Burson and some other research institutions, that organizations with great experience have better engagement and better business results. So it's in our benefit to actually invest in those experiences. So going back to Agnes.
We also wanted to get even more concrete as we approach the last before last slide here, because that's all great and good, but what is actually going to happen within organizations. And I think in our experience, when we speak to organizations, one of the key differentiator or issue there is how well the different systems and departments communicate within the organization, and who is driving the kind of change we want to see, and who is perhaps blocking it out of fear or concern, very rightly so. And Stephen mentioned a couple of good examples, and perhaps here is also a great slide to let you know about some great examples where this has really worked, and some others where perhaps we see that it hasn't worked out that well, and who are the bottlenecks. And one of the examples that I wanted to share with you, which was not very positive for the employees of that specific organization, which was going through some rather radical changes and uncertainty. So the employees of this organization that we're not going to name has been going through some uncertainty and town hall meetings with the CEOs and the country heads to reassure people that, yes, while we may be closing down this or that part of the company, let's stay ahead and look ahead. So the employees were not in a really good place morally, let's say. And at the same time, HR, of course, wanted to innovate and give something to these employees. So they have distributed wearable devices, fitness trackers that would, measure your steps or your sleep patterns, your overall health, and have coupled this with an internal program on corporate athletes. Who are our corporate athletes, our leaders who have, taken 10,000 steps today, and those who are really fit, and rolling out this idea of corporate health and well-being and fitness. And while this idea is not new, it's not unique, it's happening across companies, perhaps the timing and the way this initiative was embedded with everything else that was going on in the company was not very fortunate. And we see when there's a disconnect in terms of HR, who, for example, would like to drive change in terms of mental health and well-being, if the organization and health and safety department is not that mature, where we only speak about physical injury prevention and not yet about mental health load prevention or other areas of depression or dependencies, then these two are not at the same level of maturity. HR department is going to get very frustrated because they alone cannot drive these initiatives. These are huge transformative initiatives for the entire company. And there have been a number of articles about questioning the HR function and the role of HR in all of this digital transformation. And indeed, it's a great pressure there, especially if there's no connection or communication with the other departments. And in some companies, in some cases, we see that facilities can be actually a great ally. It can be a great driver of this, in particular, if there's a move, if there's a refurbishment, if the whole physical space needs to be changed. We work sometimes with great furniture manufacturers and designers, office space designers, and there's so much out there already in terms of ergonomics, in terms of reimagining the way work is done in the office. Ask yourself, are people actually coming to the office to work? Or do they work from home? Do they work from wherever they want? And the office space is really becoming a place for collaboration, for meetings, for idealization, exchange. Then the space needs to follow suit as well. And there are also great examples of technologies in terms of sensors, putting sensors in chairs, in furniture to track, what are our people actually doing? How are they moving about? And when you see from the data that actually the space is not really serving our people, then you really can make changes. We know that there are empty places in most offices. Why not turn one of them, for example, into a parent-child offices? We have seen this in some other companies, and you can book them centrally. And if you have an older child who can entertain themselves, why not create this kind of space? If school is closed, if there's a school holiday, but you still want to be physically in the office, create this kind of parent-child office, and you can make really good use of that. Or other places and other spaces that you can use. So basically, the main message here is you don't have to wait until you have to move to a new office or a new location. You can already take action today. And this is when we're coming basically to our almost last slides, where we wanted to boil all of this down for you. And let me just also remind you that if you would like to ask questions that we can answer now towards the end of the webinar, feel free to put them into the comment box. You have kindly sent us questions already in advance. But basically, these are some of the key takeaways. Stephen, would you like to maybe we share these together and explain a little bit about the first one? Because you already mentioned the mindset issue.
Absolutely. A key takeaway of the webinar is indeed, don't think about digital as technology. And personally, like I'm very closely connected to technology, I'm also an early adopter. I have to remind myself sometimes that it's the mindset that makes the change. The change to the workforce, the way we interact, the way we collaborate is enabled by technology for sure, but it's also the mindset that's important. And related to that, it's important also for us as HR and people professionals to help our clients, our employees, our future employees, our robots in the future to deal with that. In the sense that, let me give another example of a not so well executed digital strategy about enterprise social networking. I have a lot of organizations asking, we've implemented some sort of enterprise social networking technology, but we see there's little uptake about it. That's because, yes, what have you done? You have integrated a new technology without likely giving a lot of consideration into how is integrated into the workforce, how is it integrated into work preferences of my employees, and how have I guided them into getting there. Now, I know that from a technology perspective, the vendors would always say it sells itself, it's viral. I'd like to balance that. There's a way to do digital, just introducing a digital technology. Yes, you're doing digital, you're creating one app and helping employees probably to embrace it. There will always be a coalition of very digital employees that will embrace it, but you may not get to the effect. So if you want to really be digital, and not doing, but really being digital, we need to work on that mindset. And that takes really some effort that needs to be supported by HR, by the people management and leadership to go there. So I think that's a first great takeaway of this mindset where we can
Absolutely, and it's also about linking perhaps these unlikely areas of soft HR and hard HR, right? I mean, perhaps these are even being treated by different HR business partners or different HR professionals within the same company. Or even you have somebody responsible only for the health and well-being of employees and the other one on the digitalization process, while there's a great opportunity to link these two together because they cannot really be separated. So we really believe, of course, that the work-life integration can be a driver for diversity and inclusion. We see great examples from the BBC Digital Services, for example, who are leading the process of online recruitment challenges, where it's not even anymore anonymous applications, but really fully online, fully accessible application to anyone without necessarily a degree, but really broadening up and opening up, diversifying their talent funnel. Because what we ultimately want in our companies is to be innovative, to be creative, to be agile, to adapt to this VUCA world. And one of the key drivers for this can be diversifying your workforce, not only from ethnicity or women, but also cognitive differences.
Okay. If we look at the third key takeaway, I like the concept of starting small, learning from the mistakes and roll out. Again, let me give some real life example. As introduced in the beginning, data and analytics is important because data, if you analyze it well, allows you to steer your employee experience and employee journey based on personal preferences, based on options you would like to give to your workforce. But often I see that organizations do not want to start because I think, yeah, but we don't have all the data ready. It's not clearly contained. It's not well prepped. Let that not stop you. It's about choose a small quick win. Choose an element, a moment that matters to an employee. And typically onboarding is a very important one. Doing performance appraisals and performance reviews, giving feedback. I'm sure that everybody who is on this call already has a lot of data that can be used to optimize, to change one of those moments to be very meaningful, to create a conversation between different people, different workers, and take that as a start. And from that, so start small, take the data, analyze it, and start working on your employee experience with a greater vision in mind to completely implement a new employee experience. But start small. Don't make the mistake to want to do it all at once, to do it big. The new technologies, like I said at the beginning, it changes quite often. It allows us to be agile. It enables us to be agile. Let's use that. So let's not be paralyzed by this technology, by this mindset that's coming our way, and leverage that to our advantage. It brings me also maybe to the fourth point, which is this is an opportunity for HR to shine. As I said during this presentation, I've been working with marketeers and all as well in the past, and there we went through a transformation from looking at great tools, systems, processes that would support the sales funnel. We've now entered the era of creating that experience for the clients, which still needs great tools to build a sales funnel. The same is true for HR. You still need your tool to manage your workforce, to know who's working for you, and to pay them, because that's like a hygiene factor. If you don't do that, big issue. But it's a transactional process. With the experience that you can create, you can really make a difference towards your customers, towards your management, towards your people managers, etc. So take this opportunity. The moment is there. We have all the good ingredients to make this a very successful story. So HR, I would really call upon you to take the lead on this one.
Absolutely. And just to add one more point in terms of work-life integration, just as huge systems cause fear to people, it's the same misconceptions around work-life balance and, for example, childcare infrastructure. Work-life balance doesn't mean that you need to build your own crash. Everybody can do something. So you can start small, you can, take a puzzle approach and put together what really employees need and what's really going to get them on board, get them enthusiastic, and ensure the well-being of your employees.
Right, thank you very much, Agnes, and thank you very much, Stephen. Indeed, it's a great presentation and with lots of insight, also lots of trends and foresight about what's going to happen and what are the current trends that are having an impact on organizations and companies. So now it would be the time for you to ask questions. Please do not hesitate to share with us your comments or that you might have in terms of the previous presentation, or if you have any problems you encounter within your workplace. Stephen and Agnes, we are still going to be here for at least 12 minutes, so please do not hesitate to use the chat box and type in your question. While we wait for the questions to flow in, we have, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have received lots of questions from you in our pre-survey. And I wanted to just pick two and wanted to ask one from Agnes and wanted to ask one from Stephen. And turning to Agnes, many people in fact registered from different institutions for this webinar, and their main concern was about the digitalization in an environment, in an institution where they encounter or where they have a different setting, more rigid setting than in comparison to a startup or to an innovative company. What is your take on digitalization in a public organization?
No, I think this is a great question because, of course, when we speak, we usually try to make different examples. But of course, the overwhelming examples we have are from organizations, the private organizations, and those mainly in the knowledge economy. But we absolutely mustn't forget the hospitals and the nurses and the police force and the firemen and all the other employees or civil servants who are working in settings which is a public body, but which is also so it has its own budgetary constraints and tendering processes, but also where employees really need to be there. They need to be, the nurses need to be at the hospital and the firefighters have to be on a night shift. If I may already invite our audience here today is if you go on the Worklife Hub website on the podcasts, you might find some podcasts related to this. For example, the last one with the HR director of the NASA Johnson Space Center, who explains also their constraints and their strategies. But I would just then reflect in my answer very shortly, reflect back to what Stephen said. You have many, many aspects to your work as well. And it can be from recruiting and digitalizing the recruiting process, how you share via videos, what is happening inside your organization, how you attract future talent also by sharing videos or photos from the storytelling of your current employees. That can be one. And then continue with the onboarding experience. But what we see mostly in these public organizations, the biggest issue is around scheduling and absenteeism or burnout related to the schedules. So putting in place digital tools that will help the servicemen and women or civil servants or the nurses to take more control over their schedules, trade their schedules and working times among each other to suit around their life and childcare issues or whatever they have going on in their life is already a great step. And we see that organizations that have implemented such self-rostering, team rostering, group scheduling systems, they have dramatically reduced their absenteeism or burnout, and they have really increased customer or client satisfaction.
Yeah. Another question that I would like to ask from Stephen is about the level of stress. And we are talking now in Belgium, in Brussels, and there's a huge issue in Belgium, especially in terms of burnout. What do you think? How digitalization can help employees stress a little bit less?
Well, I think it's a question with two sides of the coin. For one element, I'm a positive person, and I think we as professionals, as HR people, should always look at the positive effects of digital technology and how we can really use these technologies to reduce stress, or even burnout, as you say, Zoltan, with our employees. To give some examples, by being able to access your email, your calendar, all the time, it can reduce stress in order to prepare for a certain meeting, a certain topic you have to bring to at a certain moment. Like Agnes was saying, in some legislations, they're now actually shutting down that access at a certain moment. I hope they got back to from that, because that's actually something that could cause stress in the same setting, actually, because you cannot access, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow. If you're not synchronized, you could be a little bit. So it's a balance for me. So, but the important message is, if I may use the word service design, when you look at your HR and you're designing a service for your clients, take into mind how you can use technology, how you can use digital advances to help your employees. Like I said, I think it's really crucial that we think about what can technology do to reduce stress. I'll give an example. It's a Deloitte app we built. It's called Get to Work. As you know, in Belgium, road traffic conditions are harsh, especially in the peak times in the morning and the evening. On the other hand, also at Deloitte, we want to be social responsible and reduce the number of kilometers driven by company cars, and promote actually our employees to take the bike or to take the train to come to work. again, if 2 years ago I had to look what would be the best and the shortest way to come to work, for example, from my at home, and I live near Leuven, I would have to look on Waze or any app to see how bad the traffic jam was at rush hour, and that would give me a certain hour, say that it's 1 hour, which makes traffic heavy. If I would take the train, I know the train between Leuven and Brussels is approximately 20 minutes, so that's pretty fast, but the train may not be direct. I don't know the schedule by heart. And by bike, I know it's around 1 hour 20 if I'm less sporty, 1 hour if I would take my sports bike to get to the office. But I had to look at 3 data points to find out what the best and the fastest way at any time was. So what we did is we created a bespoke app that combined those data together, where in one blink of an eye, you can actually see what the fastest way is depending on traffic conditions, train schedule, and your sports schedule, let's put it like that, to get to the office. And this is a way how an app, how a digital solution has taken away a lot of stress for our employees, and especially also for me, for example, because I now use this app at a very regular moment to see, okay, what is the best way to get from point A to an office or to a client in one blink of an eye. And that's how this technology has reduced my stress level, because before I was, what's the best way, stressed to get to work because I need to be on time. And today I have the comfort of having such an app that makes a difference. So that's a really practical example of how you can, in a service design thinking mode, reduce stress using digital technologies.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we have heard plenty of examples and case studies during this 1 hour webinar. But maybe as a last point, I wanted to ask both of you that in this webinar, we talked about trends and especially practices. One question that was asked by one of the survey fillers or someone who replied to our pre-webinar survey was about organizations being ready for future trends, or how one can stay on top of basically daily evolving trends. What would you advise to this person?
Thank you for this great question. And I think, again, very, very crucial point by Stephen. Think about your employees as if they were customers of your service, and think of yourself as if you were a customer of a service. How would you feel if your phone company would make you do all the work for you to be able to figure out what is your rate or how much is your invoice? What we expect from the service providers is that they do the work for us. They help us to find easy information. They help us, they facilitate us making choices, and they also give us flexibility. If I like it, I can try it, and then if I don't like it, I can give it back. So I would really advise you to put on a little bit this marketeer or customer service glasses and see your offering, your services through that lens. And if I may just add one more, piggybacking on Stephen's earlier point, is also don't be afraid to try, but also one size fits all doesn't work anymore. If you're rigidly sticking to a plan that you hope will fit everybody in your company, then forget it. That's not going to work. You need to look at your diverse employees and just give up on the idea that you purchase one thing or you offer one thing and that will make everybody happy. Stephen, if...
Yeah, great examples, Agnes. And to your question, how to stay on top of the latest trends, I would invite you. I started with human capital trends, and this is like an annual report. So in a couple of days, we'll actually be launching the surveys for the 2018 human capital trends. So we'd like a lot of people to participate to that, because this is a report that's really built on practitioners, on your insights as professionals within the HR world. So that's one way to stay on top. And then in Q1 of next year, there will be a 2018 Human Capital Trends report. Next to that, also follow the Worklife Hub, obviously, but also Deloitte, our website. There's Deloitte University Press, where we have a dedicated channel to digitalization, where we have a dedicated channel to human capital, HR practices. So there's a lot of valuable information. And also Burson by Deloitte, the site. We have Josh Burson releasing new insights, new information on HR tech, because I also noted in the question there were some questions around HR technology. For example, go there, that site, and you can find more information on that one. So that's what I do. Also Twitter, LinkedIn, in the true digital form, lots of sources to be followed. Connect with us, and we'll send the latest insights your way as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we had a great and terrific discussion today, and we wanted to thank you to Stephen. I wanted to thank you to Agnes for being present today and sharing their insights with us, and also with you, the listeners of this webinar. Please come back. We look forward to welcoming many of you onto one of our future webinars. And thank you very much for your time, and for being with us here today.